everybody. So I'm Megan Gearhart. I'm sure some of you know me, but I see some new faces that I'm not familiar with. But I'm sure everyone knows Pomona Heritage. Pomona Heritage has been part of Pomona for the past 40 years. We're the reason that Lincoln Park Historic District, Hacienda Heights, Hacienda Park, Yorba District are part of the historic districts here in Pomona. And as I'm sure as you know, we have three main programs that we use to educate and celebrate Pomona's homes and equip the people who live in the neighborhood to better do so. We have the annual Old Home Restoration Workshop. We do the home tour every single year. And then we also have the Old Home Restoration Grant Program where we reimburse people who have spent money fixing up their old homes. Things have been really different for us because of COVID. During COVID, a lot of our board had to step down because of related issues. And we're now at the point where we're trying to build back up. We've been doing things a little bit differently during COVID. We did have an online home tour. I don't know if any of you were able to catch that. It was really wonderful, put together by our secretary, Christina Garza. She did a beautiful job. This year we did have, because we raised money from our home tour, we did have a grant program, but then the windstorm hit. And I'm sure you all heard about what happened to the Perez family over on Garfield. And we decided to take the home restoration grant money and we just gave it to the Perez family as a lump sum because we want to see them get back into their beautiful home as soon as possible. So we really love connecting with people here in Pomona. We have, for example, this event here with Jeff that we're having tonight was simply because he reached out to us and said, the Mills Act is something I'm passionate about. Would you guys like to partner with me in hosting a class? And we said, absolutely. And if that is something where you have a unique skill that you'd like to bring to the community, please come talk to us. We're really interested in trying to reach as many people in Pomona in unique and creative ways. A few ways that you can help support Pomona Heritage is obviously through membership. And we are going to be having a raffle for those people who renew. We're going to be having a prize tonight that Mr. Sladek will talk more about for people who choose to join or renew membership tonight. We are looking to expand our board. If you're interested in working on a board and getting more behind the scenes and with Pomona Heritage, I would love to talk to you about that. And another thing is just attend our events. So we have a couple upcoming events that I did want to briefly mention. At the Antique Grove Street Fair this May, Vicki Scott, our vice president, has got us a table and she's been gathering donations. She's setting up a place where we'll have a couple things, vintage and antique things for sale, but mostly it will be a time to connect and reach out and say hi. So if you happen to come to Street Fair, please stop by our booth this May. One of our board members, Fred Van Allen, who I'm sure you know, maybe he sold you your house, is currently working to help restore the USS Iowa and will be planning a field trip of the USS Iowa for those who are interested in the preservation work. If that's something that's interesting to you, keep an eye on our Facebook page for signups and more information. And we are also starting an initiative this year to look into how we can support and possibly even provide grant money to restore the vintage neon here in Pomona. That's an initiative Dan McIntyre has started this year. And if you're interested in that, I can happily put you in touch with Dan. So yeah, if you would like to connect with us, we are on Facebook, we are on Nextdoor, we are on Instagram. You could also call me. I'd be happy to have you call me. My cell phone number is 909-753-9768. And I'm always happy to talk to neighbors. I live down on Pearl Street. I've been here in Pomona for 20 years, on Pearl Street for 12. And yeah, we're just excited. So thank you, Jeff, for hosting. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.
All right. We've got a nice group here, so we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who jumped on late, I'm Jeff Sladek. We have a Mills Act home, so we went through the process about 3 years ago and 4 years ago with the city, but gone through it with the old application. Recently, they made some big changes to the application, which anybody who has not applied yet, after we go through tonight, I'll show you what the old process looked like versus the new, and you should be quite excited. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here, and I will tell you that we are going to be, or at least I'm going to be jumping around a few different screens, so bear with me. But yeah, we'll kind of start things out. And if you have a question along the way, just remember you'll have to unmute yourself so that you can interrupt me and ask your question. So start with some quick history about the Mills Act. The Mills Act was developed here in the state of California in 1972. Named after Senator James Mills. He was a senator down in San Diego. And if you were ever in San Diego in the 70s, or even now, I mean, they've got some beautiful different neighborhoods, and a lot of it was just kind of falling apart. He developed this program to kind of help restore those neighborhoods in San Diego, and it ended up being pushed through for the entire state. Pomona adopted it in 2002, and up until just last year, it was pretty much unchanged. It was quite a long process to go through, painful at times, I can tell you that, but it's been quite simplified now. The program's administered by the Planning Commission, and we've got a great guy who joined Pomona last year named Jeff, he actually wrote the original program, I think, back in 2002, and he's back here with the city and just a real heart for preservation in the historic districts. And right now, I don't have an exact count, but I believe that there's just under 20 homes in Pomona that are Mills Act homes. For comparison, there's a lot of cities like San Diego and Claremont where there's 50 to up to 200 homes on Mills Act programs. So it'd be great to get some more homes on this program. The purpose of the Mills Act, number one, the Mills Act, it grants local government the authority to establish and manage a preservation tax abatement program. So you're not going to get a refund check on taxes. What happens is you don't pay all of your property taxes each year from the get-go. So it's considered an abatement program, not a rebate. And then it offers owners of historical buildings, both residential and commercial, basically an incentive to really take and invest their money in, bringing their home up to what they feel it should be, preserving it, maintaining it. You don't have to have a rundown historic home to participate in this program. You can actually have a home that you're pretty much almost done with all your major rehabilitation or restoration on and still participate. The benefits of the Mills Act to private homeowners, because that's what we're going to focus on, depending on when you purchased your home, you could save anywhere from 40 to 60% of your property tax each year, applying that to maintenance, restoration of your home. So it allows you to just take your own money, and rather than hand it over to the government, you can put it directly in your home and see improvements and help fund those. And it also will increase your resale value. I've talked to some different people, and depending on where you're at, I've heard that Mills Act homes can sell anywhere from 5 to even 10% above what other homes in historic districts would sell for that are not part of the Mills Act. And so how the Mills Act works, properties are taxed instead of what they're currently valued at on a value based on what they call an income approach. And we'll go through a lot of what I'm covering right now in more detail, but they basically take a historic value of the property and apply that through the assessor and go back through, and they basically reassess your home. You get a statement saying that the home value has changed because it's part of the Mills Act program. And for some people who have bought their homes, 20, 30 years ago, you really have to weigh if it's worth going through this and, not to say involving the government, but creating a plan that you then have to stick to going forward. The qualifying homes per Pomona that can register for the Mills Act, number one, a designated local historic landmark. So that typically is either a home that's got significance that's outside of a historic district, or any of the historic buildings that have historic status within the city. The second one, which most of you probably qualify for, is a contributing structure located within a designated historic district. So Pomona has 4 historic districts. Not all of the homes in the historic districts are what they call a contributing structure. Contributing structure is one that actually has historical value, mainly is not heavily modified. And there's actually, I'll have a link at the end here where you can actually look up online the different Pomona historic districts, the registration of them when they happen, and you can actually look up your address to ensure that yours is a contributing structure, or you can simply go down to planning. Planning can look that up there at the city as well. The third thing that can get you into a Mills Act is if you're on the National Register of Historic Places or the California Register, which I'm not sure. I think there's just a few commercial properties within Pomona that are on those. I don't believe that we have any homes off the top of my head that qualify for that. And the last thing, because I do sometimes get people who will take this workshop and they don't live in a historic district, but they are in a location that, you know, they do have a property that should qualify. So if you have a property and you don't live in a historic district, you can actually go through the process with the city to have it declared a historic landmark locally. And typically there's a variety of things you have to qualify. It's got to be older than 50 years. And it either has to have architectural significance, a famous person living there, or something that would make it a noteworthy property. An example of that is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Lassie House owned by Ray, but I think he went through that process and got his house as a standalone declared a local historic landmark. So we'll dive, now that we've got kind of a history and how the program works, we're going to actually start to dive into the details as far as the application process and what you go through to do that. So in application, a complete application when submitted are these bullet points I have listed here. It's due by June 1st. So right now we're 4 weeks out, which should give you plenty of time to complete this. In the past, I would say you're going to be working hard to do that, but with a new program and application, it should be easily attainable. So number one, a completed Mills Act application, which we'll be reviewing here in a little bit. And that's available on the city's website. So it's something that's just a PDF you can download and fill in on your computer or by hand. Secondly would be the most recent copy of your property tax bill, which again, you can either acquire online, or if you save those, you just have to have a copy of that to take into the planning department when you submit your application. The third thing is a copy of your deed showing that you are the owner, which those you can get. Sometimes you do have to go down and request those, I think in Norwalk, but that's something also should be pretty easy access. I think you may be able to do that online as well if you prove property ownership. The next thing, and this is probably going to be the most time consuming part of it, is photos of the proposed work in the project areas that are relevant to your plan. So we're going to be talking about a preservation plan that you submit. And that preservation plan is basically telling the city, this is what I'm going to do over the first 10 years that this money is going towards. So they want documentation that's built out around that. The next thing used to be very challenging to get, but they also simplified this, and we'll cover it. Copies of estimates and bids on any projects you want to do that they don't already give you an assessed value for. And then the last thing is there is a filing fee to go through the Mills Act. It's non-refundable. If your property qualifies based off of those guidelines I gave you, then they can't decline to give you the Mills Act. You automatically qualify for it. At that point, it's just getting through the hoops, completing your application and dotting all your I's and crossing your T's. So 1% value based on your most recent tax assessment. So it's not what the actual property is valued at right now, because a lot of properties have gone through the roof, but what it's valued at based on your tax bill you get. So if you bought your house, say last year for $500,000, your filing fee would be $500 to apply for the Mills Act. And one thing to know is that the planning may want additional items beyond what's listed here. We'll go through kind of their process of approving this, but some people, they will come back and say, hey, we want to have either, an actual bid on, or, if you're doing a kitchen remodel or something like that, but they will give you time to do that. These items listed here is what you have to walk in with when you submit your application by June 1st. So there are some new policy items with the new Mills Act that I'll just cover real quickly. These are required by the city as far as their policy with it. Number one, that the money saved in taxes is used to restore, rehabilitate, and maintain a historic property. That all property owners have the ability to apply for the Mills Act. So it's open, like I said, to anybody. Again, even if you're outside of a historic district, there is a possibility that your property would qualify historically, and it is a longer process, but there have been some examples in Pomona, people have gone through that. And then third, the city won't approve the Mills Act contracts where the money is not going back into the house, or where the property owner intends to remove or destroy character defining features. So in the past, I've had people who've said, oh, well, my home is set, but I'll take the savings and save that tax money. You still have to have things that this money is being spent on, such as maintaining the home, making sure that the property is in good shape. And the other thing, once in a while, we will get somebody who tells us, well, I want to knock down a wall and go to a more open concept and actually change the features of historic property. Things like that do not qualify as Mills Act projects. So, and again, that's something that would be reviewed by the actual Planning Commission, as well as Pomona's Preservation Board. So here is an outline of the application process as far as timing, so that you have an idea of what's going on and when. Number one, the step that you're in right now, hopefully, is you're going to be working on your application. It's due with those other items that I bulleted for you no later than June 1st. Next step after that is a staff review of the application. So they're going to look through your application. They're going to make sure that you have everything that's needed for them to do a full review. And city estimates that's between June 1st and June 15th. Shortly following that, if you do have things complete, they're going to arrange for a site visit. And a site visit, it does a few things. Number one, they're going to come and check out the property, review the condition. And mainly for people who've applied in the past, that includes a safety inspection. Part of the Mills Act process is making sure that the home is livable and safe. So if there's major safety concerns, those are going to be considered possible projects on your plan. And they're going to make you aware of those, that those need to be included. And we'll talk about how those projects and stuff work on the plan as we go through this. Next step after that, after your site visit, they review for completeness. City staff are going to pour through it. They may schedule additional meetings with you if they need to discuss anything further, but they take some time and actually review the application, and they prepare it for a hearing with the Historic Preservation Commission. So once they've reviewed their plan and they've agreed that this is an application that should be considered and move forward, then they're going to schedule for that to be go before the Historic Preservation Commission in a public hearing. What that means is you'll get notified by the city that they're going to be opening up your Mills Act application for public hearing. They typically do them around September. I've seen a few years where they're later than that, but September's where they're shooting for. And you're required to go down to the Preservation Commission meeting. You register as a speaker, and then they will actually go through any of the Mills Act applications that are being planned for approval. They may interact with you. I've gone to several of them, and sometimes they do if they have questions on the plan or they want clarification. I've also seen where they simply just approve it based off of the recommendation by the Planning Commission. Once you go through that process, and at that time also there could be a possibility that they want you to add something to your plan. For us, we actually had to add some window modifications just to appease one of the commissioners so that we could get our process approved. But there is a possibility that they will add something at that time. Next step, once they decide that it's agreeable, then they send it to the city council for voting. That happens in typically October or November. It's not a public hearing, so people can't speak about the application as far as other people. At the one with the Historic Preservation Commission, people can actually, I guess if somebody wanted to, they could complain about that you're doing it, though I've never seen it. But at the city council, it's more of a vote. Most of the times that I've seen them go through, they do it in I don't know what they call it within the city, but they'll vote on like 30 things at once and you don't even have to speak. But they typically will ask you to register. At least they did for me and a few other people I know that have gone through it. Once the city council votes and you get a yes, then for the most part, things are out of your hands at this point. It goes back to planning. They go through and they actually execute a contract, and you'll receive a copy of that contract. It also gets recorded not only with the city, but they'll also send it to the county assessor's office and LA County Records Office. And beyond that, the assessor reviews it. So if you're applying this year, so by June 1st, you should have this process complete by the end of December, which is the cutoff for the city to record with the assessor and the county. And then it takes probably another 5 or 6 months for the state to do their thing. You typically won't see savings on your tax bill until the following year in the fall. So you're going to start seeing that savings sometime around August, September, October of next year, and that's when it's going to go into effect. They don't go back and credit you for what you have already paid in taxes. So, and one of the important things about that is if you're planning, and we're going to talk about this in the plan, if you have projects that this is funding and you don't have savings to cover, then you need to be very strategic about how you build your plan and not load up your first year with projects, because again, you're not going to see these funds until the end of the year going into the next one. So for a lot of people, if you pay once a year, that's the following year's tax bill. So just be aware of that. So before we take the next step, which is getting into the details of this, in the past, this is where it got very painful. The old program was this huge book. You would have about a 2.5-inch binder full of photos and property layouts, and you'll actually see my plan here in a few minutes because I'm going to use it for some reference, but it was very painful. Now, I think the program is going to be very seamless for all of you who are trying to do this, especially as we go through this. But at any time, if you have questions or anything like that, you can reach out to Jeff at the city, or you can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk or even meet with you, phone call, an email, a text, and I'll give you both of our contact information at the end here. But definitely reach out. Don't just sit and figure, well, I got to figure this out on my own. There's a lot of resources out there to go through this. And we actually had, when we went through ours, there wasn't a lot of support from the city, which has changed now. We actually got support from an outside city. So definitely use the resources available for going through this program. So we're going to go through and I'm going to show you the new application. And I am going to actually share it as a PDF here on my screen. Second here. Okay, can everybody see that? Hopefully. So this is the new application. Before it was like this 15-page document with all kinds of rules and such. And now it's very simple. It's 5 pages, some very basic information. Sorry, I started on one of the further pages, but it's mainly information about you and things like signatures, some basic property information. Not a lot to stress about. So it's just filling out the basic stuff. Unless you're already in the Mills Act, you're going to click on this Mills Act contract, which is what you're requesting. And then information like property location and zoning, you can look that stuff up online, or you can also go in or call, I think, planning department. They can assist you with that stuff as well. But a lot of this is your own information. Signatures consenting to what you're going to be doing. And then this is a basic rehabilitation plan. This is what you're going to fill out with your projects. You can either use this one they provide, or I actually recommend using an Excel spreadsheet or something like that that adds up your cost and you can move stuff around. I think we filled out a rehabilitation plan probably 50 times before we submitted it. But of course, I said we had 2 years that we were going through this. But definitely play with some items before you complete this. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through it. And then this item right here is your financial analysis. Again, it's been heavily simplified compared to what it used to be. Before, it was a much larger 2-page document with a lot of calculations and stuff like that. And Jeff at the city has made it simple and not only broken it down into 4 areas that you have to provide the information on, but there also is a calculator that you can download from the city that will allow you to get kind of a baseline for what you might be saving. It's not exact, but it's a pretty good guide. I was playing around with it earlier today, and yeah, it's a great tool to help with that. And then the last page, page 5 of the application, is just your checklist of those items that we covered at the beginning, which will kind of go through some of those. Sorry, just going to go back here and that. Are there any questions so far? All right. Here's somebody. Somebody had a question? I see a hand up.
We've already done almost everything to our house that needs doing.
Okay.
So we've been here since 2000.
Okay.
We just don't know if there's any benefit to this for those of us who have already completed and paid for the work.
Oh yeah, I mean, there definitely is. We'll cover some of the projects and stuff that you can go through, but it's not just restoration. It's also maintaining the home. So things like tree trimming and painting and stuff like that, items you'll be doing, it would take care of that. So it's not just your main projects. So I would say it's always worth looking into. And also, as I mentioned, a lot of when I was shopping for a historic home back in 2015, the ones that were Mills Act already, even in different cities, they were the ones that were demanding the highest selling costs. So even at that, it will increase your property value as well. No guarantee on how much, but I can tell you it's a huge benefit because it does pass on to the new owners. They don't have to go back through the program. So
thank you.
Sure. All right, here. Let me just pull this presentation back up.
Hey, Jeff, I have a question.
Yeah, I'll go right ahead.
Sorry, my children were screaming at me during dinner, so I apologize if you already covered this. Again, we own our own business, and so blah, 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 taxes are complicated. So we don't have our taxes done from last year yet because we have the corporate taxes to do first. Is that going to factor in to the Mills Act? Do I need to have my taxes done?
No, because it's all based off of your property taxes, which is, well, it changes a lot of years, but it's all assigned by the assessor. So your property tax is set. You don't need to worry about, income taxes, any other type of tax. It's only your property tax that is going to contribute to the application itself. Perfect. So you can do this. That shouldn't hold this up at all.
Okay, because I was like, I don't have time to do both before June 1st. And then second question, and again, apologies if you already covered this. I have no idea where like my property deed or the latest tax statement is. Where can I find
So
that
most of
information?
that now you can get online, like your property tax statement, you can actually go online and pull that.
From my mortgage
Um,
company?
what was that?
From my mortgage company?
Either, you can either contact your mortgage company or you can go on the LA County Assessor's website.
Oh, okay.
If you just do like a Google search of property tax lookup, it typically will take you to that. But yeah, the majority of that you can get. I think even now a deed, I don't think you're required to go down to Norwalk anymore, which you used to. I think that you can actually possibly pull that information, or your mortgage company can provide you with that as well, because they have to have one on file.
Yeah, we actually we just called to get our deed, our most recent grant deed from the county assessor's office. So we just called them, paid with credit card, and they mailed it to us. It was great.
Oh, awesome.
How long did it take?
About a week.
Okay. So if I want to do this from June 1st, like we should all get on it tomorrow.
Yeah, or you might be able to do it quicker by just contacting your mortgage company. So I wouldn't, I would try that as well.
I'm guessing all of this information they need, like they just want a copy. It doesn't need to be like a certified or notarized copy.
No, they want copies, just copies. So you don't take actual documents down as far as the originals or, notarized.
Yeah, just making sure that there's nothing else I'm seeing that is going to hinder that. I'm really like, oh, I wish I would have known I had that this would be 2 weeks to process. We're going to make,
just copies of it. And I see, is that it? All right. I see one more. Marcy?
Hi. So I have a couple questions. One, you showed something about like a rental property and you said it really quickly and I was like, I'm confused. What does that mean?
Yeah, we'll go through that. So that's part of the, we're going to get into greater detail. So I kind of was just outlining it, but we'll actually go through actually completing this as far as assigning values and stuff like that. And I'll give you guidance on how you do that.
And then my other question is, okay, so now if we become part of the Mills Act, what if we do things that are not like
Compliant?
Not necessarily compliant, but like, for example, right now we have a garage that is not a functional garage. It's the previous owners had it as like an art studio and now it's like a cactus.
Roof's falling over.
My husband grows cactus back there. But the roof is like in a bad situation. It needs to be redone. But what we would like to do is to make it an ADU. Now that wouldn't be a rehabilitation thing.
Yeah, ADUs don't qualify.
Right, but would we, because they know like on our main house, we want to do things like redo our plumbing and our windows, like that kind of stuff.
Does it pull us away from the Mills Act?
Yeah, could we not do the Mills Act? Not for that, like that's separate.
Yeah, so the ADU is completely unrelated.
Okay.
Yeah, and it wouldn't prohibit. There's actually, there was a lot of like court battles, I think, in the past about ADUs and historic properties. So the city actually has, I think on their website, you can look it up, but they actually say that you can do an ADU in a historic district. But yeah, it's unrelated. So the Mills Act, you're going to focus on stuff that actually qualifies for the Mills Act. And that's what the city is going to be focused on. You're not going to list every single project you're doing on your home.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure they didn't cancel each other out. Okay.
No, not at all. As long as you're not doing something crazy that, like I said, we've had some people who they're like, oh, I can't wait to do this. I'm going to change my house to an open floor plan. If that's your plan, you're going to have a hard time doing it anyway in a historic district. And it definitely isn't included on something like the Mills Act program.
But if it was already done to our house before we did the Mills Act, would we not be included? You know what I'm saying?
If you're contributing structure, you would be. Now, and so as we go through, I'll talk about that in greater detail. I'll cover some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And anybody else? Okay. let's move forward here. So the application, we covered it, 5 pages, pretty basic information other than that the actual plan itself, which we're going to go through that plan and the financial part in detail. The first few pages are just you filling details out. So now we're going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of this. So major application changes. I had mentioned that in the past, it was like a huge process. In fact, I would tell you that it was like a 3-month process to pull everything together. They had something called a baseline portfolio, which was this huge document. Again, you'll see mine in a few minutes, but took a 3-ring binder, like 3-inch 3-ring binder to hold. It's really been streamlined. So it's going to be the basic stuff you're focused on. You're not going to be doing property layouts and stuff and sketching. You used to have to sketch your entire property and home and give all that floor plan details. So you're not going to have a baseline portfolio. You're going to have just the basic rehabilitation plan, which the city now provides great estimates for. In the past, you had to actually go out, and if you were going to do your kitchen, you had to have somebody come in and give you an estimate to do that, which if you're planning that 8 years away from now, can be a real challenge. So that's really been simplified. Another major change, if you've looked at the program in the past, is the financial sheet. That is gone for the most part, other than a very basic calculation, which I'd mentioned that the Jeff at the city created a great calculator tool for that can give you those basic numbers to look at. And now that can change. What you put in your application is not set in stone, because they still review it, and we'll actually go through that financial calculator as well. And then there is a new requirement, which I think there was, well, even with my meeting, there was some discussion when we went before the Preservation Commission about seismic retrofitting. Right now, you are required to get an estimate and include that. So I would say if there's one thing you need to jump on right away, it is scheduling to have somebody come out and inspect your property and give you an estimate for seismic retrofitting. Companies do it for free. If there's somebody who's trying to charge you, find somebody else to do it. But you need to get one estimate to retrofit your property to bring it up to earthquake standards for a historic property. It's typically foundation, bolting, and reinforcement. So you turn that in. The city is gathering information on what those costs range. They may or may not say, hey, we want this part of the application. And again, we'll kind of go through what the application package would look like if that was or was not included. And one nice thing about it, most safety stuff that they do require on the application typically has to be done in the first year or year 1 or 2. It's got to be at the beginning of the plan. Right now for seismic retrofitting, they're going to allow that you would put it at the end of the 10-year period. So it doesn't have to be the first thing. That way, if you are going to use this money to do that, you decide, hey, they want us to do it, or you have to do it. You've got that period of time to basically save up those funds. So priority projects that they put an emphasis on, and this is where you kind of start, marking the checkbox, is thinking about your house and what you would do to it in the next 10 years. Re-roofing, painting the exterior, foundation repair, window and door repair. If you've got a home where they have gone through and they've taken out the historic windows and they've gone to like aluminum windows, that is something that they could say, hey, we want change back. Electric repair, plumbing. The main things that, the structure of the home, things that are important that are going to make your home inhabitable for another 100 years. HVAC, replacement of non-historic. So it's really easy to get projects done that are taking it back to what the property used to be. So if there's detail work on it that's missing, things like that, those are great projects to actually have on your plan. Other items, which we mentioned. So if you've got a home that you think, hey, it's pretty much done, we don't need to do a bunch of restoration, you can do things like landscaping, tree maintenance, fencing, refinishing your wood floors, again, interior painting. So, if you're going to be painting your rooms in the future, restoration of woodwork, cabinetry, Abatement is a huge one. I mean, that's a lot of money to have abatement done if you've never paid for it to have done. Or, restoration of the interior rooms as well. And if you go at the end, I have a link to it's weird, but the California State Parks Department actually manages somewhat this program, and they've got a list on their website that's got like 70 different projects that qualify for Mills Act. So I'll provide that link as well. Inappropriate projects. So we talked about ADUs already. There are projects that they will not allow on the Mills Act. In fact, it can get you even into hot water with the Historic Preservation Committee on some of this stuff when you try to go down and pull permits on. But any project that is actually taken away from the historic features, so demolition of it or removing of it, especially exterior, won't be allowed on the program. Anything that takes away, character defining features, bracketry, woodworking, anything that is unique or original to the home should be a no-no. And then, as we mentioned at the bottom, the ADUs. The other thing too that's frowned upon, say that you have a home right now that originally it was all stained wood trim inside, and you try and put painting that trim on it. Again, it will not be approved as a project for the plan. And project estimates. So this is one of the things that's gotten a lot easier. In the past, I mentioned any project you had on your plan, you would actually have to have somebody either come in and bid out for you. You'd have to get some type of bids, emails, things like that, and proof of everything, what it's going to cost. Now the city actually provides a baseline for some of the most common items. And I'll actually show you that on one of their sheets here in a little bit. They've got a great guide for completing the Mills Act application. But the major stuff like renovating a bathroom, renovating a kitchen, there's some just basic estimates. Now you can use those, or if you still feel like, hey, that dollar amount isn't accurate, we're going to spend a lot more, say it's a kitchen renovation, they will allow you to still get a bid to have that done. And one of I guess the advice I'd give you on that is we have on ours, I think, a kitchen renovation, which we had a terrible time trying to get somebody out to give us a bid. We ended up talking to a local contractor and said, look, we're going to do this in like 8 to 10 years. Can you give us an example of a similar project that you've done? And they provided that. They gave us the rough numbers and the documentation to provide to the city of what that cost was. And the city accepted that because it was a legitimate bid based off of similar square footage. The other thing you can do is going through and contacting, like we used Yelp for a lot of our stuff. We would message service providers and say, hey, can you just give me a rough estimate on milling some molding for us? And a lot of information we were able to get with just rough details from them without actually having somebody come in and go through the process of actually bidding it out, because most of the time it's so busy right now in those industries, unless they're going to be doing the work soon, they don't want to come out and waste their time. So, and one other item to consider is part of this program, they allow for inflation. So based off the city's guidelines, even say it's $40,000 for a kitchen, but you're going to do it in year 10, they allow you to increase that cost on your Mills Act plan by 2% per year. So if it was 10 years out, you would add 2% for each year, and that gives you a little bit higher number to work with and take care of that. And as I mentioned, make year 1 light as far as projects. There may be some basic items you need to have on there, but unless you've got a great, savings to pay for some of the stuff until the tax rebate or the tax discount turns in, I would wait on some of those until year 2 and beyond. The second thing, the fewer the projects, the easier to manage your plan. One of the mistakes we made the first go around is we had like every small detail you could imagine. I think I had like 50 line items on our plan. We actually had somebody from another city guide us and said, look, just put the big ticket items on there that you're going to do, and then put them out a ways. Even if you think you're going to do your bathroom next year, don't put it for next year on the plan, because that kind of locks you in. and then you have to go back to the city possibly and try and, you know, redo your plan on when you're having stuff done. So if you're going to renovate your kitchen, even if you're going to do it in year 5 or 6, I'd recommend giving yourself some buffer. You're still committing to doing it. And then that way, if we have something else happen, like, you know, COVID, and it delays it for 2 years, you're not in hot water with the city and having to go back in and make an adjustment to your Mills Act plan with them. Again, also don't load up the beginning. And then we'll go through this in the financial part of it, but say your tax savings over the 10-year period, and 10 years is what you have to commit to as far as your plan. After the 10 years, you're not then adding on stuff. The city and the state just expects that you're going to maintain your house with that money. But the first 10 years, whatever you put on your plan, you are committing to. Even if you sell your home in 5 years, whoever's buying that home from you, they have to take care of whatever was on that plan. So the one thing I would say is don't go overboard as far as making commitments to what you want to do. If you are going to be saving, say, $50,000 in taxes over 10 years, then I would try and cover that amount and a little bit more so you have a buffer. Don't put $150,000 worth of preservation items on your plan. And the city probably wouldn't want to hear me say that, but for you and for any future owners, that's what I'd recommend.
I
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just real quick, could you cover this part about the Historic Preservation Commission trying to add on projects?
Yeah. So what they can do, so they get a full analysis from the planning department of, it's kind of a summary, but they get the whole plan to review, and then they get a referral saying, yes, we should move forward with this, or I don't know if they've ever received one that said, no, we shouldn't, because by this point, most of the stuff that needs to be added has. But you could get into that commission meeting, and again, it's with the Historic Preservation Commission, and they may say, hey, you've got 3 aluminum windows. We don't see that on your plan, but they're ugly and they're where everybody can see them. And we want that added to your plan. So that would be an example of something that they want you to add on after the fact. Now, one thing about that is, say you have a few other items that aren't as pressing that are on your plan. They've come in and say they've added $5,000 to your plan as far as cost to you, but you've got tree trimming on there for $3,000 in year 5. You then have the opportunity to remove some of that stuff because you are making a revision to your plan. You still have to cover everything, but there are some basic things that you could take off possibly to cover that. So that's what they could add on. They're not going to come in though and say, hey, we want a kitchen renovation in there, and add something like that. It's going to typically be something basic that either is just, doesn't look correct on the home, needs to be repaired. They're not going to dictate your entire plan for you. All right, moving on here. And so I'm actually going to show you my plan right now. Let me pull it up here. So, and I mentioned the plans used to be crazy. You had to submit mine was 147 pages. So just be thankful you're not going through that anymore. It was a huge application process and kind of a ode to why you wanted to preserve your home, a huge financial analysis. And then I'll go back to the plan, but we actually had to do site layout for everything. We had to document the entire home with photos and stuff. So you don't have to do any of this anymore as far as a full portfolio. Now it's really focused on what you want to do. And this is our actual restoration rehabilitation plan. So you can see that ours is definitely backloaded in the end of the plan. We are going to be remodeling our kitchen. Actually, we're going to be doing it early. So we're probably going to do it 4 years ahead of what we had scheduled here. But these first year items that you see at the top, lines 1 through 7, those were items that were discovered when they did the safety walk. So we didn't have, some of these we had, but others we didn't have on it. They were items that when they did the first inspections, they said, hey, these are issues you need to take care of up front in the plan. So we had the money to do those first year, and we went through and included those. We had a molding that needed to be replaced, which we actually did last year on schedule for year 3, where we replaced molding that was missing from our house internally. And then there's other items. So by year 6, I've got a few more years to do our bathrooms, which we have planned. So as I mentioned, the first time we tried to apply for this, which luckily did not go through, we had like 50 items on here. I mean, we named everything because we thought, well, we'll just load it up and cover everything. We didn't quite understand that we were then locking in when we did that stuff. The reason we knew that we were going to do our kitchen probably around year 5, but it made sense. And we actually had guidance from another city that said, look, don't move it up. We don't like meeting to have these plans adjusted. So if you're going to do a big project, put it out and give yourself some time to do it. So this is what your rehabilitation plan should look like. It's going to have these items numbered. It's going to have an estimated cost. And I'm going to show you right now the document where a lot of that info you can get. So I'll have a link to the city website where you can find this guide to the Mills Act. Again, this is brand new and it's a great resource. I wish we had something like this when we went through it. And it goes through a few of the details that we've talked about, but the part that I wanted to show you is this right here. This is the project estimate section. So they do cover the items in this that I talked about, the project priority projects, other projects, inappropriate, and I mentioned there's a resource on the state's parks website. But this right here is one of the most valuable items that I think you could use to really complete this plan quickly, where we actually had to go and have bids done on all this stuff. You can just go right off of the city's numbers here, plug that in, and you don't have to have anybody give you a bid. So we mentioned window repair or door repair. If you've got windows that need to be fixed or screens, window screens that need to be replaced or new, there's a guide for all that. So you've got numbers right at your fingertips. And there could be the chance that, hey, if you're doing a kitchen remodel in the next 4 or 5 years, the one project could take care of the majority of your tax savings that you're moving into with this plan. So, and then they do give some guides as well on this. And again, you can get this on the city's website, or at the end, I'll give you my email address and you can email me. But this does guide you through filling out the rehabilitation plan. And it talks about right in here where to put the costs and how to account for that 2% increase per year if it's moving out. So their example is if you're having HVAC done in year 5, you add 10%, which is 2% a year. So instead of the $15,000 that they estimate, it now puts that at $16,500. So some great guidance there. Sorry. So any questions right now about the rehabilitation plan? Okay. So again, I'll send out the resources for that after if you shoot me an email. And we can, I'd be happy to talk to you about other items and stuff like that that you can add on there. And I'm going to get to the next part of it. So we've covered the project plan. Again, if you get done with yours and you want to share it with me, I'd be happy to look it over and make any recommendations. You can do that just by emailing me at the end. I'll give you that email address. So the next major step, which used to be a challenge, but now is much simpler, the financial analysis. So this is just a guide for how much you may be saving. And I say that because nobody that we've gone through this with, the 10 people that I've kind of walked through this program with, has their savings been exact to what they estimate. It generally is a little bit off. Even I think the city uses a weird formula in theirs, which makes it vary a little bit. But these are the 4 items that you need to figure out in order to figure out roughly what your tax savings, and when I say savings, I mean what you're not going to be paying, but you're still spending because you're going to be putting into your home, but what that tax amount is that gets to be reallocated into your house over the next 10 years. So number one, you need to figure out what your monthly rental income is if you were to rent out your home. So there's several ways you can do this. It needs to be accurate because the city is going to review it. You can't just say, oh, well, you know, it's $5,000. That's what I can get. What I would recommend is going on sites like Zillow and some of the real estate websites and searching for homes here in the Pomona area. You actually find quite a few that are for rent in the historic districts. Get a baseline on that and then plug that number in. Again, this number is not concrete. What you give is, you know, if anything, maybe some guidance for the city, but I'm sure they have a more accurate means of figuring out what your home would rent for. The second one is your homeowner's insurance premium. So contact your insurance company, find out what you pay for homeowner's insurance, and you need to know what that annual cost is for the year. The third thing is what your utility cost is for the year. So water, sewer, gas, electric. This doesn't include things like your cable TV or Wi-Fi. It's those items listed there only. And the third thing is annual maintenance costs. So you need to think about if you were renting out your home and you were actually, you know, paying for somebody as far as gardening service, you had to pay for cleaning on an annual basis, items like that. It's what those costs would amount to. So again, no pie in the sky, we're just going to load this up and have all this stuff done. It is actual what would be considered maintenance costs. And there are websites that you can access pretty easy where it's for people who want to rent out their house, and they kind of tell you, oh, this is typically what you would spend a year in maintenance and repair. You take those items, and I am going to show you the financial calculator. So this is the Excel spreadsheet that's available on the city's website. Again, I can send it to you if you want after the fact. And what you're going to do is, number one, this first box is monthly. So say you can rent your home out for $2,500 a month. You're going to put $2,500 in there. Say your annual insurance premium for the year is $3,000. You plug that in there. For the year on utilities, say $6,500 for the year. You plug that number in there. And then what you estimate for maintenance and repairs, gardener, things like that, say it's $2,200. And down at the bottom here, they give you a estimated Mills Act valuation. So say your home is $300,000, say you bought it for $500,000 5 years ago, and you're paying, you know, that 0.1% on your property tax. This right, I'm sorry, 1.25% for Pomona. This right here is the new estimated valuation as far as roughly what it probably would be reassessed for. That would drop you from, so here's another technicality that unless you dig deep into this, you wouldn't know. We pay an extra percentage. We pay 1% to the state, and then I think it's 0.25% local. You only get the savings on the 1%. So that $5,000 that you would be paying drops down to $1,317. And on the second sheet here, they give you a breakdown of this in more detail. These are all the calculations they use to account for that. So if you figure out that you were paying, say, $5,000 a year in property tax, and now you're only paying $1,317, that's a savings or a redistribution of $3,600 per year, which over a 10-year period, that's $36,000 that you can put directly back into your home to cover items that you may never have been able to afford to do. So even if your home is valued at half that because of when you purchased the home, that's still it's well worth doing this program and going through. especially with how simplified this program is now. Questions? Any questions? This is usually one of the biggest question points that we have. No? Okay.
Go, just go.
Okay.
What was I
Somebody's
gonna-
got a question?
Hey, Jeff, sorry, we were rushing. We
Oh, no,
forgot.
no worries.
We got nervous. What was it I was gonna ask about? I don't remember what we were trying to ask about. It was like earlier.
Oh, I remember. So let's say I paint the interior of my house instead of having someone else paint the interior of my house. And so it's not, even though my estimate, like their estimate was 2,000 a room, it really cost me 200 or something. How are they gonna check?
So let me see who's on here. Okay, so Jeff was on earlier. I don't know if he's still on it. He probably doesn't want to hear this, but here's the nice thing about the program. They give you those guidelines, or you could have a painter come in and give you a bid, and it is going to be crazy what they charge per room. All the city cares about is that you're actually doing the work that you say you're going to do. They don't follow up after the fact and say, hey, you need to send me the receipts for what you did. We want to make sure you actually, it was 2,000 a room to repaint. So a great example, a lot of our stuff we did on our own, but I couldn't just say, hey, we're going to do this on our own and this is what we think it's going to cost. The city wouldn't accept it. We actually had to have the bids done. So the nice thing is legally that money still needs to go into your home. So that's where you can actually take and say you save that money on one of the projects. You can add projects on your own that aren't guided by the Mills Act, as far as you don't have to go back to the city and say, hey, now we finished this one too. You can just take that money and put it into your house. If you save money on some projects, use it on other wish list items that you haven't gotten to. So there is that flexibility with the program where once you set things up at the beginning, the only follow-up the city would possibly ever do is come do a site visit to make sure that by, say, year 5, did you do the year 5 items? Are you caught up on your Mills Act plan to this date? Because I will tell you, I know a few people who bought Mills Act properties, and upon buying it, they had like 2 years to do 10 years worth of projects because the previous homeowner was in a city where they never followed up on that. And I will tell you, up until now, I've only talked to one person who ever had even a phone call following their approval process from the city, but I think they are setting up now to be a little bit better as far as possibly in the future doing some site visits. And again, they're just going to come and make sure that you did what you said you would. They're not going to come in and be like, oh, we want these projects now, or what have you. And they're not going to ask you, what did it actually cost you? They just want to make sure that you're keeping good on your commitment to complete the projects that you did sign up for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Yeah,
I have one. Hi, thanks.
Hi.
It's great information. I guess my question is when you do your calculation about what you think you'll save compared to what ends up being approved, is there can you tell me how close you were, or?
Oh yeah, everybody I've talked to has been
like
probably
a couple of $1,000s, or is it like some crazy amount?
No, it's usually been within about like 10 to 15% of the estimate.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually closer, but it does vary a little bit.
Mhm.
I think ours was off by like 400 a year, but we went from paying 6,000 in property tax and it dropped by 60%. So
Yeah.
a 10% variance, it wasn't like we're like, oh man, we got screwed on this one.
Right.
It's still a massive savings. The formula that LA County uses is a mystery. They won't provide it, and it doesn't align with what most of the other counties use. And Pomona uses the formulation that most counties use. So it's just a weird thing about LA.
Okay.
So,
Hey, Jeff.
another question?
Yeah, this is Jeremy.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, what if you don't do any of the projects? let's say you're at like so many years and they're checking on you, you just like, oh, I can't get it done. I can't get it done. I can't get it done. Do they try to recoup all that money for the tax adjustments, or what happens in those situations?
Yeah, so I mean that money, those projects, if you don't do it, they could come in and be like, hey, this is year 10, you've got all this to do, otherwise they can come back financially. The other thing they can do is they can cancel the program on you, and you actually are financially liable for fees for that. If you don't do the projects you commit to, then there is recourse. Now, like I said, I know somebody who they bought a home that
that exactly
nobody
right.
did anything to, so when they went into it, they had to take that into account when they bought the home. But unless the city checks, I mean, right now I can tell you somebody who signed up for this program at the beginning back in 2002, they could have floated by without doing a single project, and nobody was checking up on it. But now things are a little bit different within the city, and I think that we're going to actually start seeing there's just a much bigger focus on preservation of our communities. And I definitely would make sure that when you commit to what you're going to do, you really think about, okay, are we going to do this? Is this something, again, you can take and do other projects and just hit that. Say your savings is 30,000 for the 10 years. Pick out projects that you know you want to do that get you just over that bubble. Don't dream and think, oh, we'd love to do our kitchen. Well, let's put it out there. And now your savings is 30,000, but your kitchen is $80,000 to do. So I would just be very cautious, and that's why I say just try and hit the mark as far as what you are committing to do and what you're going to achieve. We went overboard on ours, but only because we had already had a lot of stuff lined up to do our kitchen, and we knew we had a big buffer.
Mm-hmm.
So
does the order of your choices make a difference in that? Let's say you accomplish a year 7 project at year 3.
I'm sorry, one second here. You're muted. Unmute.
Everything's back online.
Sorry about that.
What did you say?
Oh, the question was, if you chose a year 7 project to accomplish in year 3, how does that adjustment make a difference if you were to like kind of
It doesn't
jumble around everything?
Yeah, well, the only thing you can't do is move projects out. You can move them up as much as you want. If you move it out, and I don't know how the program's changing, but like on the application, you'll see there's a box to basically to possibly change the Mills Act. But if you move things out, you technically need to contact the city and go through that process. To move things up, you can do that they don't care as long as it's done by the date that you actually committed to.
Okay.
So
great, thank you.
Yes.
I still have not heard addressing things that have already been done, but the other question is, our last assessment, I'm looking at our tax bill, because we bought our house in 2000, is 22 years into it. The assessment is like a third of what the house actually is valued at now.
Yeah.
So would I be opening up a can of worms by even having this conversation?
No, because
a triple if they reassess it at what it's actually what it's technically worth right now.
Yeah, well, I would say if your property is just, if it's worth half what it was, what it should be, no. If on if your assessment was like 20% of what it should be, you're on the border of not having any savings at all. So what I would do is I'd use that calculator, figure out what the newly assessed value is, and then it's just a simple, you basically multiply that times 1% versus what your assessed value is 1. And that tells you the difference each year and what you would or would not be paying.
Okay. And I guess it's the part of it that, it's because at the moment, at the tax rate we're at right now, it wouldn't do much. Like the savings isn't going to do much, but we're
no, it's not significant
anyway.
Yeah, if you've had your property for 20 years, it's nowhere near what somebody who bought in the last 10 years is going to be. However, there's still going to be a savings. I mean, you would have had to probably been locked in 30 years ago to be at the point where there's no benefit at all, or possibly beyond that. So it's well worth at least doing the calculations. And that Excel spreadsheet you can download from the city website, and within 5 minutes you would know, okay, what are we going to save as far as what are we going to have that we're not paying to the state that we can put into the property over the next 10 years, and is it worth it? I mean, if it's, you know, $200 a year, this might not be worth it for you to do. If it's $500 a year, maybe it is. The other thing to think about is also, you know, are you going to sell the home sometime soon, and does it add value to it? Because that is another, I guess, angle of this that people don't think about. As far as projects you've done, nothing that you've done is credited to this plan. In fact, I know people that because they're like, oh, I'm going to do the Mills Act this year, they've gone in and they've actually started doing projects, and it will actually disqualify that project from being listed on your plan. What's on your plan can't start until January 1st of 2023. That's the start date with the city. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
We had bought our home in 93, so it is 30 years ago.
Oh.
So, and I understand you to say that we wouldn't have that much savings to make it worth it.
No, not completely. That's why you really need to just do the quick financial calculation. I think it would probably take you 10, 15 minutes to run through that exercise, but you're going to be probably, you would save the least versus somebody who's bought in the last few years, because they're paying, you know, market rate on their taxes. Right. Somebody who bought a home last year in Lincoln Park, even a little like 2-bedroom, you know, craftsman home, they paid $700,000. So they're paying $7,000 plus a year in taxes. And by going through this program, they're probably going to save $5,000 a year in taxes. But it's still worth looking at.
We're paying about 6 to 8 right now.
So there could be a big savings, especially if your home was reassessed, which a lot of homes are. So I would look at you just need to get what your tax bill is, figure out what it's worth, and just do that calculation.
Analyst thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that would be what we would save every year.
Every year. That's going to tell you what you're saving yearly. And then, yeah, you and here's one of the things which we do cover. The Mills Act doesn't end. After year 10, you're done with reporting, you know, as far as there's no more plan for preservation. The money then the state just figures you're going to use to maintain the home. So the Mills Act goes on until at some point the state of California decides, hey, we're done with this program.
So the savings are there every single year past the 10 years?
From there on.
Wow. Okay.
So even if it's $500 a year,
yeah,
you know, you figure if you're going to be in your home another 20 years, that's big savings that you can put back into the house.
Thank you.
I had a quick question, Jeff.
Yes.
So, if, and this is all hypothetical, like if the state of California like reduced Proposition 13, or, you know, made it more easy to raise property taxes, would this be a good hedge against you know, getting suddenly hit by a repeal of Prop 13? And
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So it's kind of, you know, not that would ever happen. Our friends in Sacramento, you know, but
yeah.
If somebody decided to like eliminate Prop 13 or reduce Prop 13, and being under the Mills Act might help with you know, with that tax.
Oh, it definitely does. And I can tell you, even in the 3 years that we've been doing this, we see, like, you know, property taxes have changed as far as they do some reassessment for tax areas. And ours has gone up a little bit, but the difference is if, say, property tax for Lincoln Park is going up 5% next year, as far as what you pay, my 5% on, you know, a third of what my property value actually is much better than your 5% on the full property value. So even if there are changes, which there are, you're not locked into this is a value here forward, that it will move a little bit, but being locked in and the increase is not as much for you if you're on the Mills Act. So it's a great plan to have in place. And that's why it's so valuable when people come in and buy a home on the Mills Act. They're locked in super low, which is unheard of. There's no other program that does that in the state for the most part. Anna, you had a question?
Yeah, there we go. Hey, so we want to insulate our house.
Mhm.
About you, we've got high energy bills. One, is that something on the Mills Act that we could put in?
Yeah, I believe that that's part of the HVAC part of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can check. I think insulation, redoing insulation is, because originally a lot of these homes did have some sort of insulation. So making improvements to that as far as livability, it's not just like a cosmetic, hey.
And then follow up on that. So say I, have some free time and really get my act together. Okay, so, I make it by June 1st.
Mhm.
Everything's good. It goes to the state of California by January 1st of next year. You said that I won't start seeing my savings until maybe that September. But
Yeah.
technically, if I was really raring to go, because I'm so tired of paying energy, I could get, in good faith, I could do the insulation project on January 2nd, and it would be to me that year, even though I'm not seeing any of that saving. Because whatever, this is gravy I'd be paying for anyway. So technically, I could do a project, say, like 9 months before I see savings, but yeah, I would just want to have it that year. Like I shouldn't do it this year, otherwise it will disqualify me.
It just won't. It's for a project that actually is going to be started and completed in that time period. I do know some people who they started projects early because they included some stuff like a bathroom, and they risked it. I mean, I don't know if the city would have come back in and been like, hey, sorry, you can't use that now. But I do know people who started a few projects a little bit early, knowing that they wouldn't have it completed for months and months anyway. So that's, something you can do. But yeah, you don't have to wait until you actually start seeing the tax savings to actually start the project. You can start it January 1st is when your plan is in effect, basically.
Super, thanks.
And I had one more question, kind of a follow-up on this last question. Do you know if, as part of Mills Act approved projects, that I know the HVAC upgrades and certain kinds of upgrades like that would be eligible, but would like doing some kind of solar or other greening kind of technologies obviously has to be within the historic context, so probably not seen visible on the street and things like that. But do you know if they allow that, or it's not part of it?
The solar one is a good question. I actually would have to get back to you on that. Electrical upgrades are for sure. So like if you're doing things like panel upgrades and stuff, or just, rewiring, that would be, so yeah, that's a weird area, just because historically preservation commissions have fought solar on historic homes because of.
Right. But there just seems so much focus on.
And they can't by law, you can add it. But let me research that. I actually, shoot me an email and I know where to check, or actually, I guess the city also could answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask the city.
But that's a good question. That's the first time I've had that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's dig back in here. Somebody else have a question? No?
Jeff, I was just going to say, I bet with the solar, I bet it's if you're owning or if you're leasing. If you lease it,
that could make a big difference. If you buy
it, that would probably be the only way they would give you anything.
Yeah. All right, we're at the home stretch here. So a few more things to know about the Mills Act. As I mentioned, it's a 10-year program. As far as your plan, after the 10 years, it continues on, and there's no more like, okay, now you're 12 and 15, we have to add items. They just expect that you're going to be reinvesting that money to, take care of your property. So it's an ongoing thing, and it does transfer to any new owners. If at some point you decided you wanted to cancel the Mills Act, or I'm sorry, the city, it needs to be filed within 60 to 90 days before the contract anniversary. So January 1st is the anniversary each year. So if you decide that, hey, we're done with this, we've done our stuff up to this point, we now want to get out of it, then you need to give them 60 or 90 days before that January 1st date. There's a 12.5% penalty if you breach the contract terms. So the question earlier about getting out of it, I know there are other repercussions as well, but right off the top, you've got to pay 12.5% the value of the home, not the adjusted. So, you know, if the regular value of your home, say it's 500,000, then you're paying 60 grand to get out of it if you've breached your contract. So if you enter it, make sure it's projects that you want to do and then stick with it. Again, if you don't go wild with your plan and you just stick to what you're going to be paying in taxes anyway, I mean, you're going to be spending that money, you might as well spend it on your home. And then again, the city, they're welcome to inspect. They have to give you notice. It's not like something where they can say, hey, we're in your front yard, you know, let's check it out. And up until this point, I haven't heard from anybody, even historically, that has had an inspection after the fact. One other caveat, and I don't know if it's part of the new program as far as the revised, but one of the details on the original program was that if you do the Mills Act and Pomona Heritage or the Historical Society or one of the other societies within the city wanted to use your home on the home tour, then you are required to allow them to do that. Now, I don't think they've ever enforced that. We actually had our home on the home tour as a work in progress, so that was fun. But it also does open it up. I mean, Mills Act homes, especially if you've taken care of it and you've gone through this process, people are very interested to hear about it when they walk through, and your home could inspire others to then do this. And every person who goes through this and starts investing in their home, it brings up the value of our homes and also beautifies the neighborhood. So it's a good way to kind of spread the love for this program. The Guide to the Mills Act. So I showed you some of the basics in this. It's a multi-page document. It's available on the main Mills Act page on the city. I'll give you the link to it. But this right here will walk you through the application process, what we've kind of been talking through. It gives very good detail on that. That's where you find all your details as far as cost on projects and estimates and what you have to provide that's complete. One thing I didn't touch on. So the projects, if you want to do your kitchen, and that's going to be a project that you're going to list, they do want photos of that. So items that are projects, like if you list tree trimming, you don't have to provide photos of trees. I mean, the trees are accessible. They know that trees need to be trimmed every 3 years. That's something that you probably can get by with and just list, or send them a photo of just your front yard or whatever. HVAC, the same thing. They're not going to want photos of your HVAC system. If you list that, that's something that when they came and inspected, say if you did it year 5, they would know if you've upgraded or repaired that system. But if you're doing repair to detail work around windows, what the city wants to see is the before and what it should look like. So if you've got an example of the molding that maybe is missing from some of the windows, you can show pictures of that. If you've got a home where, say, some windows like replacement from metal back to original, say double hung, is what you're going to do. You need to provide some example photos and some photos of the windows that are bad. They want to see cosmetic character as far as what's changing and why. Even a kitchen remodel, you don't have to have a full plan of what you're going to do, but you should have some, go on Pinterest or what have you, or Houzz, find some kitchens that are more historically accurate. You don't have to go back to exactly what it was, but it has to work with the architecture of your home and the historic neighborhood. You can't go through and put all stainless steel everything in your kitchen and upgrade it and modernize the kitchen and use that on the program. If that's something you're looking to do, you should list other projects. But if you're looking to take your kitchen and do a historically beneficial upgrade, then show them this is the type of sink we want to do. These are the cabinets, because like our kitchen here in our home, if you saw photos of it, it was a mid-70s nightmare renovation, and none of it works with the house. So they want to see what your plan is of doing and at least some examples of where you're going with that. So those would be items that you would need to turn in when you submit your application. And we're pretty much to the end right here. If you email me, I will actually send you the PDF version of this presentation. Each one of these is a link to various websites that you can use. LA County Assessor's Mills Act Guide from the county, Rehabilitation Guide from the U.S. Secretary, that lists items. The Q&A from the City of Los Angeles. City of Los Angeles is heavily invested on here, so they have a lot of great resources there. The California State Parks Historical Building Code and their preservation office, that's where you're going to find a list of like, I don't know, 75, 80 projects that you could include that do qualify for Mills Act. And then, of course, the different sites for the city. So final questions, anybody?
Just a quick question, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
So in your stainless steel kitchen example, so if I don't list that on the Mills Act, but I still put it in, like, is anybody going to be hacked off of me that I didn't put in a historically appropriate kitchen for my Craftsman house?
So there are guidelines for historic districts in Pomona that you have to follow. However, they're mainly pointed at the exterior of the home. However, you do have to get a conditional or you go in and get a certificate of appropriateness when you're doing modifications like that. So if you're doing it legally and you're going to renovate your kitchen, you've got to go in and show them somewhat what you're doing. You could have a challenge with that, just the fact that you're in a historic home. But I mean, I know people who have done their kitchens and stuff and they haven't gone full on like retro in their kitchens. In fact, ours is not going to be. It does lend to the style of our home, but we couldn't put our kitchen back to what it was. It wouldn't be functional. So we're doing more modernized version of a Craftsman kitchen, and all the imagery that we sent, especially compared to what the kitchen is now, was a huge improvement. I'm sure that if we were showing like, black lacquer cabinets and it was just crazy, we probably would have been asked to take it off of our list, and something else would have had to account for that. So I would say just be smart, but do know that owning a historic home, you do have a little bit more interaction with planning when you're going to do projects like that. But mainly those historic preservation items are exterior.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But these
Yes.
people, these rehab people, have come into houses in Lincoln Park and totally destroyed the inside, because I've seen it.
Yeah.
So how
No,
do
it
they
does
get away
happen.
with that?
It does happen. I think a lot of that happens because the plans that they show for renovation are very basic, and they just do it and don't ask for forgiveness. Most of the inspections and stuff are done before final, build out as far as finish work. But I do think that the direction the city's going, we're going to see less of that because, there's more of an emphasis on preservation.
Also, could you give me your email?
Oh yeah, I'll put it up here. So I'm going to give you two. If you want to take a picture of this screen, or like I said, you can shoot me an email or I'll send this out to you. So Jeff, he rejoined the city, I think last year. He actually was the gentleman who wrote the original program for the Mills Act. Awesome guy. He's got a heart for preservation. He's super knowledgeable. And he's the one who is actually going to be kind of helping to hand walk these through as they go through. He created the documents as far as the new application and things like that. So he's going to be one of your key contacts as far as if you are submitting this. In fact, you'll probably interact with him. And my email address is my first and last name, Jeff Sladik @gmail. If you shoot me an email with any questions you have, I'll reply. My phone number, I can actually give you my phone number too, if you want to give me a call or text me. It's
Okay.
area code 909 525-5181. And I mean, we could even, if you wanted to, I can even set up a time to come over and we can meet on my porch, and I'm happy to do that for people. So, but yeah, any examples you want. Go ahead.
Just real quick, could you go back to that slide that had all the resources? Because I'd like to get a picture of that. I think it was two back.
This one here.
Yeah, just a second here.
And if you shoot, like I said, if you shoot me an email following this, I'll actually send this presentation, and each one of those is it's a working link, so you can just click on the name from the PDF and it'll take you there.
Okay, I'll send you an email for that. Thank you.
Oh yeah. So before we wrap up, I mean, the new program is super easy to go through this process. I think you'll be surprised how quickly you can go through it, especially if you're strategic about projects that you put on your plan. The plan is everything. Working the plan out to where it works for you, that it makes financial sense and you're not overcommitting to something, and also being strategic with timing. Again, backload your plan. Don't put everything up at the front, even if you're planning on doing some stuff, you know, next year. Just give yourself some room. The city only looks at the total value that you're saving and the total value you're putting back into the home. They don't look at the year by year. So if you had everything on year 10, that still qualifies as part of the Mills Act. But I would also recommend that you do have some stuff kind of spread out there. I think the Historic Preservation Committee, they want to see that it's going to be an active project, not that, hey, they're just trying to save the tax money and then they're going to sell and leave this on somebody else. So definitely be strategic with that. And yeah, if you've got questions about project to add on or things, or if you're having a problem getting a price on a project, definitely shoot me an email or call me or whatever. I can kind of guide you on how we got some of those. Any other questions before I end?
Can you, you may have covered this, but if you sent in your plan and then you want to modify it, is that possible to do an addendum?
You can. Say if you did submit it in and you've got a kitchen in year 3 and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You can go back in and the city has to approve the modification to the plan, but you basically resubmit the application to the city, not the full thing, but you would go back and the application you fill out has a part where you check that it's a resubmission. And at that point, they're going to engage with you and say, okay, why are we changing this? What's the difference? So there is a process, but it's not locked 100% in stone. There is some variation. It's just costly to get